Hey, what's going on, guys? Fish Tank Mike here. Today, we're going to be talking all about my awesome little guppy farm that we have over here, the wine glass tank. I'm sure a lot of you guys are familiar with this thing, but just in case you're not, I'll have a link at the top of the description so you can check out when we made this thing, get some more info about it. So while this video isn't going to be like an in-depth how to breed guppies tutorial or anything, we will talk a lot about what's going on in the guppy farm. Okay, we obviously have a lot of babies, we're going to talk about those, and we have our 5 main adults. These fish were given to me by Twin Cities Guppies. That's my buddy Kang Lee over there, and I'm super glad that I convinced myself to try out guppies. This was my first time really keeping them, and especially my first time getting them to breed. And I know guppies are super easy to breed, I've just never really kept them in the past. But anyway, just in case you're new, guys, this is obviously a gigantic wine glass. That is not meant to be an aquarium, that I was super scared at first if it would continue to be an aquarium. I haven't knocked it over, it hasn't had any structural issues. I mean, obviously it's still intact, and it's been up running for, I don't know, probably 8 months, maybe longer, maybe shorter than that, I couldn't really tell you. But let's get to the main reason why you probably clicked on this video. Let's talk about how this is a thing. No filter, no heater, very minimal light, planted tank, very few water changes are performed on this thing, and yet we feed it a ton and we have a ton of baby guppies. Probably 2, and I think a 3rd generation was just born actually like a week ago. So let's get the easy thing out of the way. The heater, we don't really need to have a heater in here because I keep it fairly warm down here in my basement with all my other tanks. The ambient temperature down here is pretty close to 75 throughout the year. On most of my tanks, our filtration is the Awaza canister filters. This is a Biomaster 350, and it has a built-in heater. It's a thermo version. So while I do have heaters and the ability to heat the tanks, I don't have to, and I don't on many of them. We have the Filto Smarts down here on the 340s, and I actually don't plug in the heater on these, but I do over on the big Ancient Gardens tank. So no heater, pretty easy. A lot of people, I think these days, don't run heaters, especially when they're, you know, interested in doing aquascaping. With this, I just didn't want to have a bunch of wires hanging out, and yet we're still, you know, the fish are happy, we're getting breeding going on, so we're obviously all good there. The only thing that's plugged in on this is the light, so I mean, we're not using sunlight or anything. That would be a little crazy, although we could because we're, you know, outside right here. It wouldn't look good, and so we definitely needed to have a light on here. So this is just a little Denelay light, and you know, I did a pretty good job of hiding the wire, kind of. And for a tank that's this tall, this is a very low light setup, or you'd probably classify it as such. I think due to that kind of low light and the fact that we have a mono shrimp in here, they're hiding. I've been kind of pulling some out and putting them into other tanks recently. I think that's why we don't really have any algae in here, and we never really have. There's been, of course, a little bit on the glass, but I haven't been in this thing to clean algae in probably 2 or 3 months. And because of that, you know, we don't have the best plant growth in here. We have the needle leaf Laguigia that's pretty much all just floating up at the top right now, and then the Rotala, what is this stuff? Just Rotala green? Or maybe it's red, I don't know. It doesn't have a strong enough light to really turn red if it was, but it's kind of beat up. I think the Amanos are actually starting to chew on that because they don't have anything else to eat. And I think that kind of segues into talking about the, you know, few amount of water changes that I do on this thing. I don't have a routine. I don't do it once a week. I typically look over at this thing and just go by how I feel the fish are doing. I know that sounds kind of weird and not something that I recommend to a beginner by any means, but because this is such a balanced system, we don't have to rely on the water change to help fix any problems, right? So the nitrate in here, it's not super low, it hovers around 20, and it seems to not really creep up much higher than that ever. I've never detected it above 20, and that's kind of interesting to me because we don't have much plant growth. We certainly don't have a lot of active growth. I'm not trimming anything, and you know, we got a couple of Anubias plants in here that don't really do much. So it's kind of a mystery to me as to why, you know, we don't have just crazy high nitrate levels in here. And so, you know, the baby fish don't seem to mind it. They're going to be more sensitive than any other fish, but guppies are super hardy, so even if that nitrate does creep up, it's not really an issue. And I'm trying to think, the last time I did a water change on this tank, I never have done more than a 50% on this thing, which would probably only be about 5 gallons, but I haven't done a water change on this thing in probably 2 or 3 months. It's been really easy. Let's take a break here and feed some of my top secret best fish food in the world. If I can get my hand out of here. I'm just gonna crumble that up into some fine pieces so the babies have something, and then the big guppies, our adults, have a little bit more. I just feed once a day and try and get it to where there's a little bit left over. We want to make sure all the babies have a chance to get all the food that they need. They're super hungry, they're growing, and the adults need it, obviously, to maintain their own health and to keep breeding. Any of the leftovers that fall down here that the fish don't get, the amanos then have access to, since they don't really have any algae to eat in here. And then that really just ties into the whole no filter thing. If I had to recommend a type of tank to do no filter on, this wouldn't exactly be it. And that's because we don't have a lot of active growing plants. We do have, new growths from the rotala down here in the front, doing some weird stuff. But for especially the beginner, I would always recommend using a filter. It's your safety net. When you have a little bit more experience, I've been doing this for a very long time, you can kind of get a better feel for when it may or may not be appropriate. But even going no filter has its cons, and it's really just not having that safety net. If I had somebody come and feed the fish for me over the weekend and maybe they dump in way too much food, then there could totally be an ammonia spike, and we don't have that extra layer of protection. The same could happen even if there was a filter. That's kind of maybe not the best example, but it's definitely a safety net that you want to have if you can. Now, with that said, there is biological filtration going on in this thing. It's just not happening through a mechanical filter that's sucking up the water and passing it back. There's plenty of beneficial bacteria growing on plant leaves and on the rocks and other surfaces in this thing. So the conversion of ammonia to nitrate is still happening. It's just not in the conventional way, I guess. We got roots going all the way down to the bottom of this thing. I think that is super, super cool. But yeah, in the description, I'll put a list to all of the things that make this up. The substrate, the light, this vessel itself is, I got it at Costco randomly one day. My buddy told me about it and I was like, yes, I have to have that. So I can't put that in there, but I also don't recommend you do this at all. I should probably crop this and put it at the beginning of the video. This is not a safe thing. Like, there's nothing that lives down here other than me, so nothing's gonna bump into this other than me, but I'm very careful. Like, if I had a cat down here, I would definitely not also have this thing, because it's just, you gotta be very, very careful. I never fill it up higher than this point right here where the bottom of the light pegs are. That's kind of my marker, but it's definitely sketchy. Let's take a look at these babies though. Maybe some of you guys can help me out. I'm not a guppy breeding expert. I've mentioned it before several times, and especially in this video, this is the first time I've ever tried to breed guppies. So looking at these babies, I see like 2 different types. There's one that's all yellow, and then there's one that's half blue with an orange tail. It looks a lot more like the parents. And so I'm not sure what these yellow ones are going to end up looking like. These are blue tuxedo guppies. I should have mentioned that in the beginning too. I believe that's what they are. And so yeah, if you know kind of what the 50-50 split, what the phenotypes are specifically, I'd love to hear it. Before we wrap up this video, I just want to come out here to the greenhouse with my white shoes on, of course, hello, and show you the pond. We did a little bit of work out here the other day, cleaned it up a little bit, topped it off, just made sure everything was doing good in here. It's a very nice sunny day out today. It's nice to finally get out of the house and check stuff out here, but all the fish doing really well. Wasn't able to find any more of the minnows, unfortunately, to add upstairs to the aqua terrarium, but still lots of cherry barbs in here. We got Chris, where's he? We can barely see him through the reflection there. He's doing good, but I'm excited to do a lot of work in here. I have some ideas as far as just tidying it up. The palms didn't do too hot in the winter time, so I'm considering taking out this guy and doing a little bit of excavation here to make a place to sit, because as it stands right now, I have to stand, and it would just be nice to be able to sit and relax in here and take advantage of the beauty. So definitely want to cut up some of these nice lush baby tears and spread them out a little bit better, probably over onto this side, and go through and change up my lighting and stuff like that. So I'm excited to get back out here and have fun, kick off pond season 3. So yeah, guys, that's pretty much it. That's the Guppy farm in the wine glass tank. One of my favorite tanks down here, actually, and it also happens to be the one that requires the least amount of work. That's one of the cool things about when you get your fish tank into that Goldilocks zone. It becomes very low maintenance, and that's what we love. The trick is getting a high-end, really cool-looking scape to do that. It doesn't seem to ever be as easy. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you're new. Hit the like button if you like the Guppy tank and you want to see more of this thing. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.